graduated from Kennesaw State in 1991, so I'm really excited to be here. You know, a lot has changed since that time. All the buildings are much nicer and bigger, but I've always held a soft spot in my heart for Kennesaw State, and also for writers, because I'm one too. So I find writers to be very interesting people that are invested in learning about all different kinds of things, and I love people like that. So thanks for having me today. So that's my book, and it's really a story. It's not just about me, it's about the 35 other millionaire moms that are in the book. I interviewed close to 100, and that'll be part of what I talk about today, about how to position yourself as an expert. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of background about my journey to get to where I am today, and then go into the whole, you know, positioning yourself. And this is part of the positioning, because I created a radio show, and I had these millionaire moms call in, and then I taped to record their interviews, had them transcribed, and used that as the core base of my book. Like, there's a lot of business advice in there. So it really helped me with the writing of my book. So, growing up, I come from a family with 6 kids and a loving mom and dad. And, you know, things got tough because my dad lost his job. He was downsized. So I heard no a lot growing up as far as money talk. You know, money doesn't grow on trees, and you know, there wasn't always time, money to do the things that I wanted to do, like go on a trip that the 7th grade was going on. Couldn't afford to do that. So I was always very aware of the power of having money versus not having money. And one time our TV broke, so we didn't have TV for a year. So we ended up reading a whole lot. So it's not all bad. And then our heat broke. We didn't have heat for 2 years, and I thought that was kind of funny, like a Hansel and Gretel. I said that when my brother getting dressed by the heat by the stove, but that really didn't happen. That's not ours. But I thought it made a better visual. I always forget. Okay, so I learned early on to take responsibility for myself, because one day I was sitting in economics. That's me in like 8th grade. So I was sitting in economics class, learning that there's no such thing as a free lunch, which I believe. You know, you have to earn your way. You have to understand that there's always a cost, whether it's stated or assumed. So I got home that day and we had free lunch cards, because like I said, times kind of got bad. So I thought, wait a minute, earlier today I heard there's no free lunch, but here's this free lunch card. So I decided that I would just, you know, buy my lunch with my babysitting money from that point moving forward. So I took responsibility for myself. And that's just there for comic relief. That's my high school picture. And I worked really hard on that hair, I'll tell you. So then, here was my plan. You know, part of life is you make plans, okay? So my plan for that summer was to have a really, really good time, because I have been working since I was basically 12 years old, babysitting, worked at Po Folks, you know, was always doing something. And so I thought, well, before I go away to college, I think I need to have one really fun summer. So that's me jumping off a bridge at Lake Burton, me up in the mountains, climbing a mountain, rafting, water skiing. So my plan was working perfectly. My thought was, okay, this car that I have, I'll sell it before I leave for school, and I'll live off of that money. Well, the problem was, that was the plan, and the obstacle was my father. So my father had lent me the money to get the car, and I was supposed to pay him back. And he told me all summer to work. He said, you're going to be sorry, you're going to be sorry. I'm like, no, I'm not going to be sorry. So I have it all worked out. I'm going to sell the car, live off of it. It's going to be great. So the morning when it came time to leave for school, I had sold the car, and I said, Dad, I need the check. I'm leaving. I was going to school in Ohio, 8 hours away. I said, I need that check. He goes, what check? And I knew I was done right there and then with those 2 words. I was like, oh no. He goes, you mean the check for the car that you never paid me back for? I said, yeah. You know, so he said, sorry, good luck. And so I left for school 8 hours away with $30. He gave me $30 for gas. So that was my lesson that I learned. So, and achievers in life know what they want, and they take action in spite of uncertainty. So when I left that morning, I left with $30 and an apple, and I thought, well, I can, you know, tuck my tail and stay here, or I can just go and figure it out. So I took a leap of faith and, you know, drove the 8 hours and got out of the car, and I thought, all right, the apple's gone, $30 gone, now what am I going to do? So I ended up getting a job that afternoon. Oh, and this is a little side note. I met my future husband 30 days before I left, and which is an example of timing is seldom perfect. So 30 days later, I was like, see you at Christmas. This is pre-email and all that. So, but you have to seize opportunity when it's presented, and it's rarely on your time schedule. So be open, even though it's not going exactly the way you planned. So I got there. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I said, okay, I gotta find a job. So I walked into this bar. I said, are y'all hiring? And he said, okay, start tomorrow. And so I was really excited about that because now I had a source of income. It was bar, so I was gonna get free beer. And so I was really pumped. And my cousin was going to school there at the time. He said, he was a junior. He was like, how did you get a job there? He says, I've applied every year for 3 years and have been turned down. I said, well, I just went in my tank top, my cutoff jean shorts, and said, are y'all hiring? I said, apparently you have the wrong asset, so you gotta work what you got. So, and then I created support systems through my friends. These are a few of my friends on a Friday night in my family room. So, it's important to build your network. The keg of beer will build a very quick network when you're in college. So they started bringing me food, and so they would smuggle me food from the cafeteria, and that's how I lived. I would eat ramen noodles, 19 cents a pack, and eat dry cereal, and my friends would sneak food to me. So it worked out. My roommate, she reminded me of the Kennedys. She had all these pictures of tan and bright white teeth, faces, all over the counter, and they were in, the Bahamas. They're on their ski trip, and I was like, wow, that's really awesome. That's the way I want my family to be when I grow up. So I started, that was my first time starting to visualize what my future was going to be like, and that's an important piece of the pie. And it's difficult to get clarity on what it is that you really want. I mean, it sounds simple, but if you really stop to ask yourself exactly what do I want, you'd have a hard time answering that in detail. And in order to achieve, you really need to know exactly what you want, when you want to have it, and how you're going to measure your results at the end. So there's got to be a specific number attached to it. You have to get really defined in what you want. So, the boyfriend, he kept driving up every 2 weeks to see me. So it was 16 hours round trip, and I was like, oh, there you are again. So after a year, I ended up transferring back home to Kennesaw, so that we could continue dating. But he showed persistence. I mean, it would not have lasted if he hadn't come up there every 2 weeks, because I'd have forgotten about him, frankly. But nothing personal. But so 22 years later, we're still together. So it paid off for him. And then when I came home, I ended up getting, I was working at the Hyatt Ravinia across from Ashford Dunwoody and in banquets. And I did all kinds of things in the hotel, but this particular night I was working banquets. And Ducks Unlimited was there. It's a wildlife organization. So I ended up serving them, and the organizer came up to me afterwards. He said, everybody really loved you. Would you like to come back next year as one of the models instead of a banquet server? And I was like, well, how much does it pay? And it was like $100 an hour. I'm like, I'm there. So that's what I did. So I totally forgot, because it was a year later he called me up. But that's where I ended up meeting my future boss and my future business partner was that night. And I ended up just sitting down at their table because that was part of the thing at dinner. He just sat down. And I was, yucking it up with the whole table, having a fun time with them. And afterwards he said, would you like to come work in our company? Because I, have a position, kind of like a gopher secretary thing. I was like, I bet you got a position. But so I was a little hesitant at first, but I thought, well, if he's not a straight shooter, I can always leave. But he was going to pay me a lot more than I was making. So, and it turns out that, he was a tremendous influence in my life, and, just really changed how I looked at life. So I was working full-time, going to school full-time at night here. And the parking situation has not changed one bit. had long days. I would get up at 7 in the morning. I'd get home at 11:30 at night because I'd go from work, drive out here for 5:30 class, and but I went from like whatever grades, you know, whatever I got, and to straight A's my last 2 years because I was focused and disciplined. And that's another thing that we have to be aware of as we go through life is, are we really optimizing our time? Are we doing the best that we can do? I know personally when I'm busy, I'm much more effective. I don't like to have tons of free time because then I just, you know, I get on Facebook, you know, it's like whatever. It's just so easy to be distracted. So it's really important to figure out in your personal situation what, you know, I don't know if y'all have heard of the Pareto principle or not, the 80-20 rule. Well, that rule is, so let's say there's 100%. 80% of what you do, 20% of what you do results in 80%, gets you 80% of your results. So what is it in your life, whatever your situation is, what are those activities, that 20% that is giving you 80% of your results? And let's say you have 10 clients, okay? 2 of those clients are going to be your best clients that you enjoy working with, make the most money with, and then the other 8 will be marginal. So in order to free yourself up to have more time to work with more of the type of clients that you want to work with, you know, it makes sense sometimes to cut those cords on the ones that are time suckers that really aren't helping you get to where you want to be. So you just have to become very possessive of your time and learn to be comfortable saying no. And at first, I had a hard time. I was like, okay, you know, if anybody had asked me to do something. But I started using the phrase, you know, I would love to, but my calendar won't allow me. You know, so it got blamed on the calendar. Not that I didn't want to, it's my calendar's fault. So, you know, you just have to become very focused and very disciplined if you have a goal that you want to achieve. Oh, okay, so I knew I was coming to college here, so I thought there might be some youngsters. Well, no. So I was going to tell them, be careful who you marry, because you know, you kind of have to speak the same love and money language, and then once you make that decision, be committed, because it'll cost you. Okay, so you also have to recognize and accept when it's time to move on. I had worked for Raymond for 8, 9 years, and then he sold the company. And the new company, Raymond used to always tell me I was a 10. You know, I was the best employee, I was the best everything. And then I went with the new company, and I went from like a 10 to a 1, and they were just not really, you know, there just wasn't a mesh there between us. It was very, I was in a male-dominated industry, and you know, women were good for being a secretary or in sales. And after I trained my 5th boss, I was like, why can't I be the boss of me? You know, they kept churning them through. So that's kind of when I decided it was time to move on. So then I'm a stay-at-home mom, because that was my out. My husband's like, you want to have some kids? And I was like, I could see just like pushing a baby carriage around the park, and now I have to deal with those yo-yos. That'll be a good idea. So I thought, so then I become a mom, and it was a much more difficult transition than I thought. You know, all those all-nighters up, and gosh, and you know, I'm sure a lot of y'all are moms in here, so it's the hardest job in the world. But as a stay-at-home mom, I was responsible for the budget. And after about 18 months, I realized, I'm like, you know, we're just kind of, we were trying to keep with our savings program, we were keeping with our tithing program. So all the extra money was just gone. You know, there was no good times. You know, we weren't going out to dinner, we were eating in. I remember going out to the movies one night, and it was the $1 movie, and we ate at Costco, and like the whole night cost $5. And my husband that was his best date night ever, I think. That was right in his wheelhouse. So me, not so much. You know, Costco hot dogs give me indigestion. So I just was standing there in a Walmart realizing I couldn't afford an extra gallon of laundry detergent and stay within my budget. And you know, my son's like 18 months old, kicking in the little, you know, cart, and I just got so frustrated and angry because I felt like I was back to where I had, you know, grown up with that feeling of lack. And I said, that's it. This story is ending right here. So I'm not going to live my adult life not being able to buy some freaking laundry detergent if I need it. So I just became very committed in that Walmart cleaning supply aisle, and I said, I'm going to start a business. So going back to that clarity, I felt like I was really far, far away from those pictures I saw in my dorm room, with my roommate. I thought, I can't even get laundry detergent. How am I going to get flippers? So I decided, no, this is what I told myself standing there. I'm like, there's just not going to be any more no's. It's only going to be how. I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to figure this out. And the reason I say why is more important than how, because the reason why I wanted to do it was for my son in that cart. I wanted to create better for him and for us. And so then, of course, people immediately go to, oh, I don't have the money, I don't have this, I don't have that. So in my opinion, there's not a lack of resources, because resources are everywhere. It's a lack of resourcefulness. And you have to learn to tap into your resourcefulness. And that's part of being committed. If you're sort of committed, you're going to derail. If you're 100% committed, you're going to figure out what you need to do to make it happen. There's a huge difference in the mindset. So I decided to start my own business from home, and I contacted my old industry, ended up creating this collections company that I did in my pajamas, like that is not my feet, by the way. Mine aren't that cute. So I was working like 6 hours a week, making twice what I made working full time. And I thought, this entrepreneur stuff just completely rocks. I should have done this so much earlier. But part of that was I sent in this proposal, and I asked for the moon. I was like 3% of everything I collect, $15 an hour, whatever it was. And I would have been happy if they said, here's $10, go at it. So they took it hook, line, and sinker, and that was a real awareness moment for me, that people will pay you what you perceive yourself as being worth. And as writers especially, it's important that you have your value that you know, because it's going to be, you know how it is out there. People are always trying to knock your prices down, and you have a valuable commodity. I mean, it's hard to write. Most people can't do it, so don't undervalue yourself. I learned that in that lesson. So then I decided I was going to come up with a bigger, bolder vision, because I wanted those flippers and the vacations, right? So while I could afford laundry detergent now, it wasn't going to set me free. So then this is my actual chart from September 25th, 1996. I forced myself to write down 3 business ideas a day. And I don't know if you can read these or not, but they are not that good. So I was like, but I said I was committed. I wasn't stopping until I achieved my goal, which was financial freedom. And specifically, I said I was going to make $1 million by the time I was 30, and I was 28 years old. And I was writing ideas like translation service, so I was like a long way away from that goal, but I said, I don't care what I have to do, I'm going to figure it out. So I did this for 10 days, and at the end of it, I thought, if I'm going to hit a goal like that, I need something big, and this isn't going to do it. So I ended up going to lunch with my old boss, Raymond, and he's like, what are you up to? And I was like, well, I'm trying to come up with this business idea, and we started talking, and then I realized in that moment, looking at him, that was the answer. I had worked in the waste industry for him. He owned like landfills and a garbage company. So I thought, well, he sold his business. I watched him build and sell his businesses 3 times and make millions and millions and millions of dollars doing it. And I said, they all made money, a lot of money. So what if I copied that model, but in a different industry, that consolidation play? And that would happen really in a big way and very quickly. And so I said, hey, while we're sitting there, what about this idea? And you have to learn to appeal to people the way, I'll go into that in a minute. You have to appeal to them on their terms, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But what I want to say about the goals, I call them bad goals, big hairy-ass goals that will get you excited to go after it in a big way. So, and as part of that, I had bought some Tony Robbins tapes, and it was $250 for this cassette tapes. And, you know, I was complaining over a $15 bottle of laundry detergent, so that was like an enormous amount of money to me. And the old Joyce would have been, I can't afford it. The new Joyce said, how can I afford it? And I looked at our budget, and we had been tithing $250 a month at that time, and I thought, there's $250. And I was like, well, I could listen to the tapes and then donate them to the county library so that everybody would have the benefit of listening to these instead of sending the money to church, because those lights are going to stay on with or without my $250 next month. So that's what I did. And I listened. And another point is be coachable. I followed his system. I did everything he said to do, and it worked. So, and at the same time, I also read Think and Grow Rich. I don't know, how many of y'all have read that book? Yeah, it's a little dry because it was like written a long time ago, and there are books that are kind of similar to it now, but that was like the first real breakout, you know, success formula book. And it really teaches you to get specific in your goal setting, so I recommend that book as well. So, you know, you can also go to the library and get a lot of this stuff. I am constantly checking out CDs, books, all the time. And so it's really important that you find things that appeal to you and then follow it. I know I'm guilty of this now. It's like if I'm like, oh, I know that, I'll skip that step. But no, you don't skip steps. You really have to follow a system. So don't show up and throw up on people, because you know, Raymond had all the money in the world that he could ever possibly want. So when I was talking to him about partnering in the business, I didn't say, let's make a lot of money. I said, you know, Raymond, you've been really, really unbelievably successful as an entrepreneur. And you know, the only thing that I can see that you haven't done is take a company public. Wouldn't it be fun if instead of being the one bought out, you were the one buying, and then we could go to Wall Street and go public? Wouldn't that be awesome? And that's how I kind of got him interested in it. And he's like, that could be good. That would be fun. You know, he's retired, it would be another adventure. And so he said, you know, create a business plan. I went to the Kennesaw State Library. That's, you know, in abstract days, you know, before Google. I would come to the library and do research, Thomas Register. I literally researched my business at the Kennesaw State Library. And I kept feeding him information for 6 months. And, you know, there was no guarantee that all that time I invested that I would get any payoff or not. But I did it anyhow. You know, be the type person that doesn't have to have the marshmallow right now. You know, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that study with the kids and the marshmallows. You know, kids like me see a marshmallow and they eat it, but the patient ones wait and then they get 2 marshmallows. But so it was worth the effort, and you know, he ended up investing in the company. He put up the first $1 million, and then I went and got a line of credit and got a $13 million loan and started buying businesses. So, and then I want to point out Brandy from The Apprentice. How many of y'all watched that this past season? I love that show. It's all about entrepreneurs. But so I watched her in the finale, and Donald Trump's sitting there, and the one guy's like, oh, Mr. Trump, you'd be awesome to work for. I know everything. I'll do it all for you. And then she looked at him and she said, you know, these are my qualifications, and I really feel like I'll be a good fit with your children as you move forward as an organization. And you know, let's face it, Donald's not 40, okay? He's kind of at the end of his run, and he wants his children. Clearly, he's incorporated them into the show. He's in the takeover mode. And so the fact that she said to him what his objectives are, he picked her over him. And I was like, that was brilliant. And that's what you have to do when you're talking to people. It's about them. It's not about you. It's what can you do for them. So keep that in mind when you're negotiating. And self-validate, because as you go through life, people are going to try to kick your dreams in its teeth. You know, I remember talking to a lawyer trying to do some research for the business plan, and he started laughing at me when I told him. He was like, no, who are you? You know, what'd you graduate? No, I was a communications major to avoid math. So I was like, yeah, you know, I was having this conversation with him, and he just kind of laughed at me. And I thought, you know what? You go ahead and laugh now, because I'll be laughing to the bank. And then you will, well, you won't work for me because I don't like you, but you could, if I chose. So 6 months later, you know, here's a brochure, part of a brochure that, you know, was packaged that we sent out, and that's Raymond in the background and my working partner, James Rock, and, you know, we took a calculated risk. I put $10,000 into the deal, which was all of our savings, because, you know, and as in life, Raymond wanted some skin in the game, so I did it. You know, I put everything I had in there to partner up with him. Of course, you know, he had way more money in it, but it was a fraction of what he was worth, whereas it was all that I was worth. So, you know, as far as ratios go, my knees were knocking harder. So then, when I bought my first business, which was in Norcross, I walked in the door, and it was a non-hazardous liquid waste company. So we would buy septic companies and grease trap companies and plumbers. So I walk in the door, here's this driver, and I'm just, you know, I'm feeling like the queen. I'm here, you know, it's like, I've done it, I bought a business. And I step inside, and he said, are you new here? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess you could say that. He said, well, great, we've been needing extra help around here. Could you make me 50 copies of this? And I went, huh, okay. So in that moment, I had a choice to make. What kind of culture do I want to establish? Do I want to be, you know, a dictator and be like, you know, or do I want a helpful family type atmosphere? So I said, I'm happy to make those copies for you. Where's the copier? So I went and I made it, gave it to him, and he went on his way. And then 30 minutes later, the old owner introduced me as the new owner in front of I think there was like 30 employees. But the only face I remember seeing was that one. Yeah, that's him. So that's not really him, but that was his face. So it was always fun surprising people when they underestimate you. So take joy in it. So to kind of give you an overview of what exactly I did, because people are like, what'd you do? I raised money. And this is going to go into how you position yourself as an expert. Got a loan for the first $13 million, but then we had to raise, all told, I raised like $65 million. So the next stage was, and remember, I was a communications major to avoid math. So this was not my comfort zone. And so I had to raise the next $13 million. I had what they call accredited investors in the room, which is another way to say rich old white guys. So they're all in this room. There's like 50 of them. And I had to stand up there and deliver our corporate message and get them to invest the next $13 million. And I was terrified. I mean, I was literally hyperventilating because I could not speak. I had never spoken in public. And here I was trying to raise all this money. I was extremely uncomfortable to the point where I was literally hyperventilating, thinking I was going to faint, looking for a brown paper bag. I was like, I'm going to die. And then I thought, well, Joyce, you need to get out there and raise that money, so put on your big girl panties and go do it. So I did, and I raised the money, but then I thought, you know, I never want to be in that position again where I cannot stand and deliver my message. So at that point, I started going to Toastmasters and overcoming that fear of speaking. So we'll have a conversation about positioning yourself, and if you are really anti-speaking, trust me, you can overcome that. Because I was very much not wanting to be a speaker. So I raised the money, we did acquisitions, we bought companies typically around the $5 million range until we reached a mass of $50 million, and then we did a reverse merger on NASDAQ and went public. So after we proved that the model worked. And then I reached my $1 million cash goal 6 months early. So by 29 and a half, that when I was sitting at that kitchen table with that silly little list, I did it. And if I can do that, sitting at my kitchen table, not having a clue, just imagine what you can do. It's all about tapping your resources, knowing who's in your network, knowing your background. You know, I didn't try to go do something I didn't know anything about. I did something that I understood, that I knew worked from my experience. You know, I've been in the field like probably 10 years total, so that's always helpful too. So now here are my pictures in my house of my family, and so that's the Disney cruise, that's Paris, Walt Disney World, my son goes to Wesleyan. You know, I've created the lifestyle that I really wanted. You know, we live on the river, I made it happen. And how did I make it happen? By getting off my ass and making it happen. So that's what you gotta do. I mean, you really have to catch fire. You can't be ho-hum. You gotta determine what it is that you want and then go for it. So, you know, if I can go from getting dressed in front of an oven because our heat broke, you know, with no, you know, I was just a young girl and nobody expected me to do anything really other than, you know, have babies, to the streets of Wall Street, just off of thinking of an idea and taking action. What can you do? Don't short sell yourself. You know, we're just being here is amazing. Do you know how many other spermatozoas you beat just to be here? Like 30 million. I'm not kidding. I looked it up. So don't be afraid to invest in yourself. You know, go to conferences on your area of interest. You know, buy the books, buy the tapes. To me, it's like with my book, I have over 525 years of actual entrepreneur, you know, millionaire moms experience, work history and experience in a book that's, you know, 18 bucks. I mean, that's the deal of the century. You know, coaching, and I am talking to you, so you have to overcome your resistance to investing in yourself. I know a lot of people struggle with that, like, oh, I shouldn't do that. And if you really are that kind of person that doesn't want to spend money on yourself, go to the library, start there. Start using the free stuff, and then, you know, start applying it and get some success. And then when you do have more funds, definitely invest in yourself. Because literally, I mean, look at the stock market, look at the real estate world. It's all a big mess. The only thing you can count on is yourself and your business. So now we'll get into the 7 steps that I took to establish myself as an expert. So I don't know, well, here's the list. First, you're going to build your list, okay? You're going to write articles rather than advertise. And make sure you get a byline when you do write articles. At the bottom, directing them to your website so that they will get on your list. You're going to interview influential people in your industry, whatever it is. You'll do joint ventures, webinars, and teleseminars. And of course, social media, like it or not, is going to be a piece of it. You're going to learn how to cross-market. And you're going to all become speakers. And I'll come sit at the table and watch you. But you guys let me know when you're ready to move forward. Forward. So the gold is in your list as an expert. Okay, so how many of y'all have heard of AWeber? It's a double opt-in program. And really can use any email service, constant contact, but you want to make sure that it's double opt-in, that people really, like, I can't stand it when I go to things and then people take your card and they put you on your list. You know, you start getting emails and you're like, I didn't sign up for that. So the people on your list are going to sign up to be there because they want to be in your world. Because my opinion is it's better to have a conversation with 100 people than scream at 1,000 because they're just going to report spam and unlist you anyhow. So have a real dialogue with your list. And then use a strong carrot to encourage sign-ups. You can give away an ebook, you can give away MP3 recordings. There's Guggenheim. There's a lot of public domain sites where there's free stuff like that. Napoleon Hill book, Think and Grow Rich, that's in the public domain. You can go download that and use that as your giveaway. So, I mean, you don't even have to do any work. So, but just make sure that you have a strong offer, okay? And don't forget to do postcard mailings and I'm not suggesting that you do all of these right away. Pick one or two, focus on that till you get good at it, and then you can add another layer. But, postcard campaigns are very strong as well, because people still, get mail every day. So a lot of people get so focused on internet-driven type businesses and that they forget about that. This is my son, Ethan. He's 8, and he got his airsoft stuff for Christmas. So I say infiltrate, so, right, rather than advertise. You're going to weasel your way into these different magazines and different company newsletters, whatever, to position yourself, as a writer and as an expert. Because there's a big difference in somebody reading your article in a magazine versus you advertising your services. Let's say you have editorial services. Well, am I going to value your editorial services more if I read your article, or if I see that you've got a eighth of a size advertisement in the back of something? And here's this website is a list of associations if you need help figuring out who you might want to write for that's a fit for your world. Oh, and if anybody's a good copywriter in here, I'm looking for one. We can borrow it. So, coaching for writing. Okay, so influential people can really kind of help lift your boat. In my book, Brian Tracy, he's a personal development guru that if you're interested in that field, you would know who he was. And my book is a personal development type book, so it was natural for me to approach him to endorse my book. Chili from TLC, I interviewed her on my radio show, and then we kind of hit it off, and I sent her a request, would you write the foreword for my book, which she agreed to do. And then also Fran Tarkington, I met Fran Tarkington's CFO when I was in the MBA program here doing the business plan competition. And so anyhow, the CFO, they sponsor the business plan competitions for the December one here at Kennesaw. So I ended up meeting him. That freaked me out. I was not expecting that. I went to his office, and I was meeting with the CFO who was giving me advice about growing my business, which I thought was nice. And there was Fran Tarkington. I was like, holy cow, he's in the NFL Hall of Fame.
Would you mention how you got your radio show?
I will. So
what station is it on?
it was a podcast. It was not like on the FM. But see, the thing is nowadays, that really doesn't matter. Because when I first started calling people, I thought, well, they're not going to want to do it because it's a podcast, And, I was talking to myself going, what's in it for them? And the reality is nowadays, everything's so viral that they know that they need to do all different types of radio shows, podcasts, because it goes on iTunes. People can download it free there. And also, I would send them a copy of their interview, and then they could put it on their website. So they appreciated it. It was something that they could use in their marketing. And I tell you, when I first started, I thought, well, how am I going to find millionaire moms? So I would watch Donnie Deutsch, The Big Idea, which was an entrepreneur show, and I would see a woman on there, and I'd be like, okay, I write down her name, especially if she mentioned she had kids, and then I would go Google them and get their number, and then call them up. And the first few calls, I was like, I'm like, why are they, I was just psyching myself out. I remember telling my husband, because the first radio show I did, she was in California, so she couldn't do the call till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was like 4 o'clock here. And all three of my kids come home at like 3:30. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. So I said to my husband, I said, everybody has to stay outside for an hour while I do this call, okay? And he's like, yeah, okay. And so I make the phone call. The second it starts ringing, I hear, brrr, brrr, right outside the window, and he's on this John Deere tractor right outside my window. And I'm like, I'm gonna kill him. And then the kids all come in, the dog's barking. I'm like, oh. So I ran to my closet. And I'm in my closet, and I'm like, hello, hi, it's Joyce with the Millionaire Moms Radio Show, and I'm literally in my closet doing this show. He walks in like 30 minutes into it, and I'm talking, and I'm like, so what do you think about that? And then she's talking, and he's going, what do you want for dinner? Or something like that, I need to go here. And I'm like, I have the phone, I'm looking at him, and I just totally blanked on the call, and I'm like, and then all of a sudden I hear, hello, hello, and I'm just like, oh, I'm horrible with this. So anyhow, and I didn't know how to edit, so the whole thing had the hello. So I've learned how to edit now. So don't freak yourself out. You're gonna make mistakes. It's gonna be uncomfortable, but I can guarantee you by the 100th time I did it. It was a smooth operating system. I learned the questions to ask, and it's really, really amazing. I promise you will fly by gatekeepers. I'm actually consulting with somebody right now, and I've gotten this close into talked into doing a radio show where because you could bring prospects, especially if you're here in town. There's BizX Radio. They charge for the service. It's an investment. It's like $1,000 a month or something. But you can bring your people, like your leads, to their radio station, and you sit there with headphones on. They got the mixers. It's a real experience for the person that you invite in. And so then the law of reciprocity kicks in. They go through this experience where they're scared. Well, first of all, nobody ever asked them to be on a radio show, right? So they're honored. You flew by the gatekeeper, because when you call and you're like, hey, this is Joyce to sell you something. No, he's not here to play. Hey, it's Joyce with the Millionaire Moms Radio Show, and I'd like to interview your boss, Jim Bob, for our radio show in October. Is he available? Oh, well, hold on, one moment, and you get right to it. It's amazing. It's so sneaky. I love it. So, it really does work. Even if you don't do it in person, if you just did it through a podcast at home on your phone, you still have made that contact. And then, you start that relationship. And so then you can sell them, they'll be like, oh, thanks so much. Is there anything you can do for me? I remember Heidi Roizen, she was in town, and I interviewed her at that radio station I was telling you about. And she is a venture capitalist from California. She plays bridge with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. I mean, she's like way up there. So she had this new CD that she put together, which was an exercise, talk you through, I don't know, some type of exercise thing. She made all this money, and then she was looking for something to do, and that was her new business. And as she was leaving, she's like, is there anything I can do for you? The whole, if you give somebody something, they naturally want to give back to you. And I've seen it. She's just been on the Martha Stewart show, and then my podcast, of course. So and then I said, oh, you can introduce me to Martha. And she laughed, and that didn't happen, but you won't get unless you ask. I've learned that in life. So joint ventures are great for launching books, or any launch that you have. Okay, so you can do industry-specific teleclasses. Find people that are in your, it's not really competition, it's more like cooperating with people in your industry. Because after a while, it gets to be a small world, right? You kind of get to know the players. Don't look at them as your nemesis, look at them as your helpmate to help your business grow, and then you help their business grow. And webinars and podcasts, have any of y'all done webinars or podcasts? you know, it's not hard, you know, it just takes a little, well, most of the time I get interviewed, I haven't really been doing webinars myself, but, you know, like I said, you can't do it all, so pick what appeals to you. I'd rather come and see you guys in person and talk and develop a relationship than, you know, do my own webinar. You know, ultimately, I'll incorporate that. But create events and include other businesses. Like with the one guy I'm consulting with, I said, you know, have a mixer for your clients. You know, get them to support. You know, be your own chamber of commerce. And then, of course, social media, you've got to build your fan base. Twitter, I have like 9,000 something people following me on Twitter. And it's amazing the kind of stuff that you can make happen on Twitter. Like, I was doing a presentation and I needed a projector. And some guy that worked next to UPS said, oh, you can borrow mine. I said, does anybody have a projector I could borrow? I live in Atlanta. So this guy gives me like this $300 projector. He doesn't know me. He met me on Twitter. I go, you don't know me. Do you want me to write you a check or, you know, something? He goes, no. If you don't bring it back, I'll just bash you on Twitter. So I said, all right, good to know. So I made sure I got it back to him the next day. You know, make sure you, little simple things, like put it in your email signature line. How many people have a signature line? Okay, there's still a lot of hands not up. It's a great way to advertise yourself. You know, put a link to your website under your name. People will click on it just out of curiosity. Ping FM is a site where you can go to and consolidate all your social media type stuff. You can put in one tweet or one posting, whatever, and it goes out to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and there's a whole bunch of, you know, kind of B-level accounts on there as well. And Twello is kind of like the yellow pages of Twitter. TW is like Twitter, TW and then yellow, but TWELLOW. Twello.com is like the yellow pages of Twitter where you can go into, you can find your industry and, you know, get on those people's lists, get them following you. And Twitter really is a great way to establish relationships with people that you normally would not have access to because it's such a different medium and a lot of famous and high up individuals do their own Twittering. So what you can do is you can create a list of your target clients and then and you'll have a list like target clients and then you make sure you go read their tweets and you reply to those tweets and then all of a sudden you're like in a relationship with them. I've got this one guy who lives in Texas and he always posts pictures of my book, like he was like in Utah, you know, and I'm never his face, just the book, and you know, like up against Mount Rushmore, and you know, it's crazy, but it's fun, you know, it's a lot of fun. So you know, I was like, oh, that's really neat. And then he introduced me to somebody I ended up writing for, and you know, so you can make some really interesting connections that way. You know, but and then outsource it if you don't want to do it. Find a college kid or a neighbor's kid that loves being online, pay him $10 an hour, and say, do this for me. You can come up with content to say, do it. And also on Ping, you can pre-program your social media. So let's say you don't have time during the week, but on Sundays you can spend an hour a week inputting this stuff, and then you can set up the time frames where it goes out on Monday at 8 a.m. or Monday at 8 p.m. And so that's another functionality of that. So cross-market in your network and in your mediums. So Fran Tarkington, right, I'm in the green and standing next to Fran. He let me use his office space. He was launching Master Suite program, and I had, this is at the end of the day, most of the people had left, but I had 40 or 50 people there for one of my events. You know, he gave me a free space in Tower Place down in Buckhead, Class A, you know, office space, and we had a great day. It was a lot of fun. And then he came in, you know, he's Mr. NFL Hall of Fame. Everybody's like, woo, Fran. And everyone got their picture taken, which was a really kind of cool value add to the day for the people who stuck around to the bitter end. But I, as part of that, talked about his Master Suite software. So And remember, with whatever you're doing, whatever your writing is, you have to be digital now. It is, I saw that statistic yesterday. Amazon's now selling 3 times more ebooks every month. No, wait. Selling more ebooks every month than paperbacks, and 3 times more than hardcover books. And I can tell you, like, I have my book on Kindle, and it's so exciting when you get like this little statement from Amazon where they're paying you money instead of you paying them money. It's just, gives you a warm fuzzy. It's just wonderful. Okay, so now, in order to be more persuasive, you need to have a few tools in your toolbox. You have to be positive and pleasing. Don't show up and be Eeyore. You got to be Tigger. People just will not respond to you. Nobody really wants to hear, did you have a great day? Well, no, I got a flat tire, flipped a guy off in traffic. It's like, no. It's like, hey, everything's great. Glad to be here. Prospect. Always be prospecting. You never know where you're going to meet somebody that you end up doing business with. And I'll go through a couple of scenarios with how I've gotten into different situations with you in just a moment. So always be prospecting. But I don't walk around thinking, oh, what can I get out of this? What can I meet people and I think, okay, well, you're wonderful at writing memoirs. I know somebody who wants their memoir written. So then I'll make that introduction. So I'm always prospecting for my entire network, not just for myself. And people appreciate that. Because it's out of the blue, I'll send an email, hey, I just think you two would need to connect. They remember that. And then they look out for you too. So make sure you prepare. It builds your confidence. If you're always flying, and this is a problem for me with 3 boys and career and everything that life entails, it's hard to always properly prepare in advance. But if you do that, you'll be much calmer and confident. And be perceptive. Remember, it's about them, it's not about you. Draw them out. Figure out what their pain points are. There's always pain points, and pain sells. That's what sells, pain. So just keep digging until you get it. Make sure when you perform that you over-deliver. Even if you have to eat stuff sometimes, eat it. Because in the long run, it'll come back to you tenfold. You screw somebody, they're going to make sure a lot of people know about it. Word of mouth marketing is extremely strong. I always err on the side of the customer. Like I said, probe to find the pain points. Persist. That's where the rubber meets the road. You're gonna have obstacles. It doesn't matter what it is. You're gonna have them. So, is your goal more important, or how you feel in that moment? Are you gonna be a weenie or a warrior? Okay. So, and then prove your worth. Gather testimonials from people. There's nothing better than have somebody else say something nice about you and your work than, if I sat up here and said, oh, I'm great. You're not going to believe that. But if she says I'm great, you'll believe it. Perception. Remember, the first 30 seconds, you always have to kind of have your act together. It's 70, I think the numbers are something like 70% appearance, 28% tonality of your voice, and like 2% your content. It's kind of scary, isn't it? But it's true. Which is why I get up and work out every morning. So, and then power. All of these combined together give you personal power. And just become a more aware person of yourself in your life, and where you're stumbling, where you might need some extra shoring up. And then surround yourself with people that lift you up rather than drag you down. Because I'm a firm believer that the 5 people you hang around with the most determine the level that you're going to reach. So do you want to fly with the eagles or be on the ground with the turkeys? Which was, my dad had a t-shirt that said, how can I fly like an eagle when I'm surrounded by turkeys? And that was my favorite t-shirt. So putting it all together, and here's a roadmap of how I got here today. So here's me at Ladies Who Launch. I was one of their speakers. So I show up there, I speak, and I meet Hollis Gillespie. Do you guys know who she is? Yes. Being writers, I figured you would probably know Hollis. She cracks me up. she makes me laugh. She's so funny. So I meet Hollis, and I end up speaking at her workshop on how to get published, different ways of getting published. So then, after I meet her, she's like, I have a client that I think would be a good fit for you. She gives me this client. I send, oh, and here's another thing. Send people referral checks. They love that. They really do. So I told her, anytime you have a fit for me and they become a client, I'll send you a referral fee. So I sent her a $500 check based on the money I got off of it. And she called me up, holy crap! Oh my God, there was a $500 check in my mailbox today. It was from you. I can't believe it. And I was like, well, I told you, that's what I'll do. And so that's a great way to get repeat business. That was a pretty big deal I got. So she got $500. And then he was a book client at first, and now he's a business client as well. I'm helping him launch a different part of his business. And it's really exciting and fun. And then because of Tom, we were working on his memoir. I contacted Margaret and said, do you have any interns that might be interested in getting a publishing credit and helping write this memoir? So I started talking with Margaret, and she's like, oh, you have an interesting story. Let me put you in touch with Lisa. And so then I met Lisa. Where's Lisa?
I think she had to step back for just a minute.
That's fine. So, and Lisa invited me to come speak in front of you today. So you just never know how life kind of weaves and bobs. Here's another example. Okay, this is me at the author's party at the Decatur Book Festival this past September. I was the first nonfiction business writer that they ever had speak, because they figured with the economy, people are interested in growing their business. So that was fun. So I go to the party, and then I met this guy, Arthur. Arthur is an author. That's not easy to say. He's written a couple of books with like Random House, and he needed some help with his marketing. So he became a client of mine. I met him at that party. And then I flew up to New York City to consult. It was fun. He sent like a car to pick me up. I felt very VIP. And I'm walking down the street, and there's Russell Crowe. I'm like, oh my God, it's Russell Crowe. I'm like, I can't believe it. We walk by each other, and everybody there's in black coats, and I'm wearing this red coat because I'm from Georgia, right? I didn't get the memo. Didn't get the memo. No color in New York City, okay? So, and that's kind of how he looked. Like, I was thinking, do I get one of his movie star pictures? But that's how he looked when I walked past him on the street. Just in the, I think he was actually wearing that jacket. So I was like, hi, Russell. He's like, hi. I was like, I feel so Mary Tyler Moore. So it's fun. I'm having fun doing what I love doing, which is, inspiring other people to go after their goals. And then from there, Tillet's Publishing, the owner of Tillet's Publishing, was in the audience and heard me speak. And then he came up to me afterwards and he said, would you like to write for my magazine, Counterbalanced? So I was like, would I like to write for your magazine? Of course. So I started writing about balance, and the great part was he actually paid me. I've done a lot of writing for free just for the exposure, but now I'm on this thing where I like to get paid. Imagine that. So he pays me to do the work that I should really do anyhow for my own website. So it's like a double win. I get to be in his magazine. I've got the byline at the bottom, driving traffic to my website. And then from there, I kept giving him ideas about his business. So now I'm working with him full time, consulting and helping him increase his sales. So, and then as an added benefit, my dad got to see me speak at that event. And, it was just a really great day. So, and I've got my mom here today. Hi, Mom.
She's always been a joy. She's well named Joyce.
Oh. Now you know why I brought her. So remember to dig deep versus wide. It's better to go deep in what you're good at than trying to please everybody everywhere. That's how you become an expert. And that's why I niched to moms. Really, everything in that book is applicable to men. to any entrepreneur. But I thought, well, I have to niche it down to be different from everybody else. So that's why I thought, well, moms work so hard, they deserve a hand up, so I decided to go with moms. So you can visit my website at millionairemoms.com, and there's the free download I was telling you about. I figured I better have that up there. You can go to millionairemomsecrets.com and get a free ebook. Or you can email me. I think the free ebook is it's an interview I did with Barbara Carey, who invented the spin lash. She's invented a ton of different things, like a hair wand thing, and she did it all where she didn't invest a ton of money. She got purchase orders in advance, and she has an interesting story. So that's what's there. Or if you prefer to get like more business advice, I have an ebook on business advice, and you can email me at Joyce@millionairemoms.com, and I'll send you that. Thank you for listening to me. Okay, so. Thanks. And so does anybody have any questions that they want to ask?
Could you start over, please?
Oh, if I do, I gotta take these shoes off.
One of the things I run into occasionally is learning the new technology that goes along with doing some of this. I've been having, all of a sudden this year, I've gotten all these interview opportunities that people are asking me to interview certain people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was panic stricken because we're doing them over the phone, and it's like, how do I tape these things? And I could get my questions ready ahead of time, but you don't want to be sitting there trying to scribble the answer they're saying without listening to, and being prepared to respond to what they said. So I did find a way to, on Skype, there was an app that I could add to that.
Call recorder or something?
Call recorder,
Yeah.
yes. And so that's working for me to do it that way. But I've spent like a week, I spent an entire day at the Apple store, the AT&T store, and Radio Shack trying to figure out how to tape a call on my cell phone because I was in Dallas when I needed to do the interview rather than here. And everything was geared towards taping it from your home landline. So how do you cope with, or how do you figure out some of that? Do you ever bump into that? I mean, maybe because you're younger than me, you don't, but
Oh, no,
I
trust
tend
me.
to run into
It's like
problems.
hitting your head against the wall sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, you can use things like free conference call. It's a .com.
Yeah.
There are inexpensive or free different businesses where it doesn't matter where you are. You get a number and you both call in to this number and then it records it. So I used free conference call for all of mine. The problem sometimes with the free ones is there's like an extra step, like you have to remember to push 9, and if you don't push 9, you're screwed, because you didn't record it. So, but I would definitely use a teleconference service. That'll solve your problem. And try not to use a cell phone. Always try to use a landline because you can drop that call. And ask your people, please don't be walking down the street taking this call, if you want me to use it, if you want me to post it. Because I remember one person I interviewed, it was like, you could tell they're like, do you have a dog on the phone, or are you like walking really fast? And then you could hear a siren, in the background. I thought, well, she's not going on the website. So, you got to be aware of that. But definitely just use a free conference. And then Skype, if you use Skype, on Amazon, I think it's like $79. They have the Snowball microphone. The company name is Blue, and it literally looks like a snowball. You'll know it when you see it, and it really, on your side, will make it sound like you're in a studio, rather than, because the phones can sound tinny. And I did all my first go around with this, and then that's the thing is you start talking to other people, and you start. Oh yeah, use a snowball, that'll solve that problem. And so on your end, it'll sound top quality using that. And so you can use Skype. I prefer teleconference lines because, I don't know, it's just, that way if you're in New York City or whatever, you'll have that number and not have to have an issue.
Well, you have to have an internet connection to use Skype, so that's.
Right. Yeah, which with a phone, you could be anywhere.
Skype mobile for the cell phone.
Yeah, but then you're back to the cell phone thing issue in terms of call clarity.
And I saw another hand with a question.
I have a question. You, in the information that they provided before they, that they posted to the website, so that, and we're gonna talk about various points, and one of them was about conducting interviews. Do you have any special points that you'd like to make about that?
About conducting interviews. It really, for me, I asked the same questions over and over again because I was writing a book. So I would ask them questions about time advice. How do you do it all? I would ask them their best. I'd send them in advance. I would say, please think through your best 2 or 3 pieces of business advice that have served you over time. And so I would prepare my interview in advance. They would get the phone. This is where you call in. By being on the interview, you give me express permission to use this for, gain. So I'd have a legal disclaimer on there that I could use it any way I wanted to use it, and then I would have the list of questions. And then, depending on what you're doing, you just got to think through, what do I need to know? Why am I interviewing this person? So, like with the guy that I'm helping at Tilley's Publishing, we'll come up with some type of marketing show because he's a marketer. He sells advertising in homeowner associations and directories. It's a very niche, and it's a wonderful thing because most people have a hard time getting into these high-end demographic neighborhoods, very targeted. So we'll probably do a show about marketing and then have other people, other businesses that would be target clients come in and share how they market. Oh, and by the way, have you ever considered niche marketing right into Country Club of the South and, St. Ives and all the other ones?
Regarding the permission, for games, do you get a signed contract for that?
Not for the interviews, but when I wrote the book, I did a release that I sent out, and had them sign and fax back before I put them in, just to be double sure.
What did you learn in getting a book published that you feel like would be helpful to us, particularly
That's a
in the
good
process
question.
of getting published?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to get published.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. She asked, what did I learn through the process of getting published? Which is an excellent question. And I learned there's many, many different ways to go about it, first of all. You can send off rejection letters. So you can send them to traditional publishers. You can self-publish. You can do a hybrid where you get distribution but minimal marketing support. And the bottom line is the landscape has changed so much in our favor. It's amazing. It really is. The traditional publishers, for people like us who are fairly pretty much unknown, you're really not going to get much of an advance, if any. Like I know somebody who wrote a book, he got a $5,000 advance, but he spent it all on editors and, because that was put on him to deliver a finished product. So really, unless you're like a celebrity or some big name, it's really traditional to me is not the best way. I went the hybrid approach through Morgan James, where I got distribution into Barnes & Noble and Borders and Books A Million, but there you had to pay for the design cover and the layouts and all that. So there was a fee of creating the product, but you got a much higher royalty return than you would in a traditional marketing kind of thing. So, and then the other way to do it is to self-publish. I mean, Amazon.com will self-publish you. I've done several books with people through Amazon. Vicki Locke, the Steve and Vicki show. I met her through Hollis, and so I'm friends with Vicki, and her dad is 80-something years old, and it had been a dream for him to get his book published. And she's obviously a very busy person, and I ended up taking the project over for her and getting her dad published through Amazon. And they were just thrilled. They had like a big champagne party up in Ohio where she's from, and she made her dad's dream come true for a very minimal amount of money. So Anybody and everybody can be published. And then the things like Kindle and iPad, it's just, the barriers are gone. It's all up to you. And you know, sometimes you'll get people like, oh, did you go through a traditional publisher? And you know, they'll kind of like, they're sniffing around like, are you a real author? You know, you know, don't buy into all that. Just get it done. And that's the thing about writing. I never considered myself a writer. Robin Spiesman, I don't know if y'all know her or not, but she approached me to write the book. And I thought, and every time I speak, people say, well, do you have a book? And I'd be like, no. And they're like, why not? I'm like, well, because I don't. And so I thought, well, Robin thinks, you know, Robin's the one who got me published in Morgan James. So I thought, well, Robin's going to open the door for me. It's easy breezy. Okay, I'll write a book. So I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning for 7 months, like about 3 times a week, and I wrote my book. So I was also in MBA school here, and I was also working full time, and I also have 3 boys and a husband. So I was busy. You know, I had every reason not to write a book, but I did it because it was on my goals. And when I get my mind set on something, you know, barring death, I'm going to do it. So, you know, that's how you got to be in life. Make it happen. Be a force of nature. It freaks people out. You have a question?
I have 2 comments to add to your presentation. You've done a nice job, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I was getting nervous.
And I'd like to share publicly because I think everybody could benefit from them. 2 things. You commented about the postcard mailing. Absolutely, you're on spot with that. I have a marketing company that I've been running for years. The one thing that you learn about postcards is that they get them from the mailbox and they have to go through their mail and find out what they're going to throw out and what they're going to recycle or whatever, but they have to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to touch the email. So they have to touch it, and if you make it compelling enough, they'll look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very important. So that's touching thing is a real important part to maybe add to your PowerPoint presentation. The other part is on your phone presentation. I share this with everybody that I possibly can. I have always had a mirror in front of me when I'm on the phone. I have 2 mirrors actually in my office now. And it's very important. And when I was talking to my daughter the other day, she's looking for a job. I said to her, and she was kind of blue because she's having a hard time finding a job. And I said, Amanda, I said, do not pick up that phone and talk to one person until you go and stand in front of the mirror. I said, as a matter of fact, do it right now. So she went into the bathroom and she stood in front of the mirror and I said, what's going on? And she says, I'm smiling. And I said, there you
Perfect.
go. So if you look at yourself in the mirror as you're on the phone, you'll see what they're hearing. Very
Absolutely.
important.
I like to take it even further in that when I'm interviewing somebody or I'm being interviewed, I don't sit down. I like walk all around my house. I keep my energy up. I don't like to sit. I like to be up because then the energy comes through. So get headphones.
I have a question about speaking engagements. I mean, when you're first starting out, your book is published, I mean, you know, you're out there trying to hit every avenue of publicity that you can. Would you just go to any and everyone and request a speaking engagement to expand that network, or would you remain very focused and true to your industry? What's your recommendation there?
I stayed targeted because, you know, the men's clubs aren't going to want Millionaire Mom there, you know. So I went to eWomen Network and I spoke at their national conference. And people are like, the women who know who eWomen is, they're like, how did you get on that stage? I said, well, I picked up the phone and I called Kim Yancey because I had interviewed his wife. His name is Kim and her name is Sandra. I had interviewed Sandra on the phone. See, she knew who I was because I interviewed her. And then when it came, you know, I sent them a copy of everything. And with the conference, I said, hey, I have this idea. Why don't we do a Millionaire Moms panel at your next conference? I was in. And then, you know, there's 2,000 women I'm speaking in front of at this event. And then I met the national liaison for SCORE on Small Business Association. And I ended up being on their blog, and their blog is in the top 4 websites in America. So there's a lot of traffic that comes through there. You know, that adds to your credibility. So everything that you do, there's another result that happens from speaking.
I just wanted to throw out another site that is useful, I think, for women particularly, skirt.com. We got interviewed for a magazine, e-magazine article, e-zine article, which led to a podcast, which led to a webinar, just through really just kind of befriending this little interviewer who was more of an intern than anything else, but liked it and took it on. And I didn't even know about skirt.com before that at all. And that I thought was a connection that was really useful for women to go to.
That's great. I have to check them out. I know Cynthia Good at Pink. She had Pink Magazine, now it's pink.com.
This has like 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, with books, you know, you can potentially sell 250,000 books just by being popular.
Well, I'm definitely calling them.
So yeah, up your
250,000, wow, that'd be awesome. Yeah, no, and that's it. I mean, you really have to dedicate yourself to promoting your book, because nobody else is going to do it for you. But it's so interesting. You can start mixing in your book with your business. Like next week, I am meeting with a gal that wanted